companies that I worked for that really didn't exist. It was serious, and I was wondering if I'm the one that's speaking these people, it's not about them, right?
Well, that's funny because
There's 100 people in the room, and I have to pick or fall in love or whatever with the one person who lies all the time. When supposedly I'm pro not lying ever. It's kind of interesting that I would always pick the people who lie. So what? I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean,
Why would you pick people that lie?
I don't know. I've had that happen myself too. I mean, it's partly just because you want to give people a certain benefit of a doubt, like, you know.
Of course.
And even when you know they're lying, sometimes you just like, if you know their history or whatever. Like, I mean, I've definitely let people stay in my life who I knew were rampageous liars just because I knew what their history was and I felt bad for them or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? So.
Maybe it's just the liars are more interesting because
It's
true.
yeah.
Well, that's true. Obviously, the lives they carried were way more interesting
Yeah.
than regular people.
Could be an unconscious thing.
Yeah, that's what I wondered. Like
Likely.
it seems like you're ready to project, faith on people. Just to,
true,
Yeah,
but
for-
always with
Which
the
makes it
hope
easier to lie to
unconsciously
you.
to be deceived, right?
You're
Or to be
resting
betrayed.
on, you're resting on the wrong pillar.
The other side is that they are looking for somebody who will, whether they know it
For
or
sure.
you
not.
were meant to be together.
So your unconscious thing might be then to put yourself into that situation purposely so that you will figure it out. You
Well, it's really painful.
In order, well,
Well, it
it
always
is.
is.
But in order for you to learn and grow, right?
Mhm.
That so that next time you'll be able to pick this out ahead of time.
See, it would be different
Right.
if you're doing it on purpose.
Yeah, of course.
It just means you're not learning your lesson.
Mhm.
That happens
No,
to
no,
me
that's
in a
true.
lot of
I don't
things
think
where I
any-
keep repeating and repeating and
Yeah.
repeating.
I
And I'm
am
like,
very skeptical of the idea that we ever learn lessons as human beings. I think we fuck up in the same way over and over, and that's how we fuck up until we die. Like, you know.
Well,
So,
one of
the way you fuck up.
Hey, hope for the future.
They're like lying.
Yeah. I don't know. Am I pessimistic? Whatever. I'm not glasses half full. I'm not glasses
I
half
wanna know if
empty.
you're
I'm
selling
glasses
tickets.
50% full of water and 50% full of air, and that's the reality.
I
The
want
hope
a
for the
ticket.
future is that we keep figuring out different ways of fucking up. Keep it interesting.
Well,
New and interesting ways.
in working
Revolutionary.
with trauma, the sort of the energy, if you could even say it has a consciousness, it seems to think that by reliving that experience it can figure a way out, which is also a blind hope because it never can.
Well, it's
You
also
have to
interesting.
step outside of the problem and sort of fix, what we do, what I was doing in this trauma system was to repair the energy boundary, because the energy boundary being broken attracted in this
Oh,
the
yeah.
repetition. So by
It's almost
repairing
like
the
people
energy boundary-
get in a state where they're so used to feeling unrest that it feels more like home
Yes.
than rest, so they invite the unrest. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's in a sense it's not that's not a conscious invite. It's just what happens because the energy state is lifeless. So in this trauma healing thing, you repair the energy state, and then all the symptoms fall away. So if you're looking it up, traumahealing.com.
Trauma?
Healing.
I seen T-R-A-U-A.
Yeah, Trauma, healing.com. It's Dr. Peter Levine.
Yeah, sounds interesting.
Yeah.
My understanding of some of that you're talking about is that a lot of times when we first experience a trauma to begin with, it's a trauma because we didn't have the mental and emotional faculties to process everything.
Yeah, that's right.
And later you may have developed those faculties and you can revisit it and
Well, that's what the therapy
Heal it.
does. It gives you part of it is you with a client. One, you get them to see it without being emotionally involved, and two, you prepare the way by giving, if it's quite serious, by giving their way in ways of focusing on a positive thing, so that they'll go into the negative and then you take the positive, and just that oscillation between the two brings the positive energy in. At least that's sort of explanation we go to.
it sounds kind of like one of the ways that I learned how to deal with that is to like revisit like remember it,
Yeah.
and but then walk into the memory as you are as an adult,
Yeah, that's
as your
not
current,
right.
and then interact with the former you
Yeah.
and explain it to them, with your newfound understanding.
Yeah, that's one technique.
I think this is interesting because it comes back to, like I was saying before, the distinction between authority and entitlement. There's a lot of people who have suffered very greatly from entitled people who come in their lives, and this becomes, and it's funny you should mention therapy, because there's nothing worse for an abusive personality than to put them in therapy, because that person is already, they make their emotions the center front of everyone's consciousness already. They don't need therapy, they need a kick in the ass. One of the most poignant lines that I got out of Lundy Brankoff's book on the abusive mindset was, it is not a mental illness to be an asshole. It does not mean the person is sick. It means they are a dick. It's not and specifically, what he says is not a problem of psychology, it is a problem of values. They do not value the other person, and therefore they are treating them this way. It's not that they're mentally ill or something like that, it's that they don't value the other person.
Yeah.
And that there's a big difference between those two things. And particularly, I think, for people who find themselves the victim of that situation, it's very easy to repeat the same cycle just because it is more familiar in many ways than a healthy relationship. And you go with what's familiar, generally, most people. It's practically biological. People will, science has easily shown people will date people who look like their parents and act like their parents and so on and so forth. And yeah, to go radically out of line with that, some people do, but the tendency is to go with what you know.
I was gonna say, I've never dated anyone who looks like my mother. But at the same time,
So
I have
you
a buddy whose wife looks exactly like his mother.
Really?
It's-
I didn't realize
That's
I was
a good
engaged.
choice.
I was engaged to a girl who looked like my mother, and I didn't realize until years after we broke up. Yeah, because I didn't see it at the time at all. I was like, no way. And then I looked at pictures of my mom when she was that age, and I looked at pictures of my fiance, and I was like, oh Jesus Christ.
Going back to the people go with what they feel familiar with and comfortable with, one of the most powerful techniques that I got out of reading about NLP and all that is pacing, reading, that kind of thing, is where, because people are like what they're familiar with, is you just mirror their behavior. Like, like if they swing around a lot, like, then you do too, right?
Right.
And if they got their hand up by their mouth, then you do too, right?
Right.
If they have a drink, and you'll see people do this who are really close friends. Is one takes a drink, like you're
Then
saying.
the other one will take it.
Yeah, like you're saying with the watch thing, right?
Right.
Well, what you do it artificially, but subtly. Don't do exactly, but do something.
Yeah.
Do something like what they're doing.
That's one thing that I actually should have mentioned that I want to mention. There are people who do NLP very clumsily, and whenever you see that, it's so terrible. It's so terrible when you know what they're doing and that, like, you see what they're doing. Like, I've seen that before a couple of times, and it makes you want to claw your eyes out. Like, it's so bad. So it's not something you just jump into with both feet and all of a sudden start calling people on what to do or like whatever like that. You definitely got to take your time with it and take it slow, because if you get caught doing this shit, oh man, it's over so fast. It's over so fast.
And so, like, even the how fast they're talking, or if they're talking really low or quiet or whatever, you match it. And then there's a point where you get rapport, what they call rapport, where there's just all of a sudden you realize that they've linked up with you.